With the hype of Monster Hunter Wilds, a lot of veteran hunters will soon be returning to the series, but there will also be a lot of new players as well. So hello gamers, it's Nyce, and I hope regardless of which fleet you are in, you're having a nice day. Today, we've compiled 10 interesting tips you need to know before playing Monster Hunter Wilds that can make a big difference in your playthrough. These will be in no particular order, and we'll update this list as more information comes out and the community does some more testing, so make sure you're subscribed for more. Now let's get into it. Starting us off at number 10 isn't the most exciting tip, but it's absolutely necessary, especially for those playing on PC. And that is optimizing your game's performance. PC games launching with poor frames per second and overall poor performance has been all but too common in recent years, even from the most AAA of titles. Monster Hunter Wilds actually got into the same discussion before even releasing due to their open beta test not having exactly the best performance for all users. The developers have stated that the open beta test used quite an old build than the launch build that's currently going to be played, and that version of the game you'll be installing is so much better optimized. Console performance has been confirmed to be optimized on the PlayStation 5 as well, and at 60 frames per second per content creator testimony. However, with PC gaming, it's a little more complicated for us, being that we have different hardware, right? Fortunately, if you're having performance issues, there are settings that you can tweak, and if you're curious on performance before launch, there is a benchmark test you can download for free from the Steam store. This will simulate close to actual gameplay and display your stats such as frames per second. You can even tweak various settings and see how they affect your performance and frames per second. I highly recommend doing this before buying or even pre-ordering any product if they have the option. As you can see, I don't exactly have the most high-end PC. I have an AMD Ryzen 5 and a 3060, and here's my results at the end of my benchmark. In short, I recommend making sure you're prioritizing performance and playing with each setting to see how much it affects your FPS. Now, this next one I discussed in a previous video, but Monster Hunter Wilds introduced a game-changing feature known as Focus Mode. Focus Mode has quite the effect on combat when it comes to landing precision attacks and allowing for more of a free-form camera movement. This is very evident when using melee abilities, even more impactful with slow or charged melee attacks from weapons like the greatsword or the hammer, and those who really put their all into these attacks. If combat is feeling a little clunky for those of you new to the series, then use Focus Mode, and a simple setting tweak will help this feel even better. Look for this advanced setting for Focus Mode and make it a toggle. This will make it so that you're not constantly holding the button down to be in focus mode. Then when you're done, you can just press it again, it'll be untoggled and you're good to go. However, this would be very clunky or unnecessary for ranged weapons in my opinion, since aiming automatically puts you in focus mode anyways, right? Thus, there is an advanced option to make it so that your melee weapons are toggling focus mode, but your ranged weapons like your heavy bowgun, your light bowgun, your bow, they will require you to hold down the focus button since you're going to be holding down the aiming as well, which is the same button, right? It's all personal preference, as some of you may prefer the default setting, but I figured this would help a lot of you the way it helped me. Another key component of focus mode is that it synergizes with the wound system. You'll see this red around monsters' wounded parts, which means it's vulnerable to a focus strike at that location. Each weapon has a different focus strike, and they are each pretty epic. Attacks against the same area will open these wounds, and once you see this red glow, damage against that spot will do extra damage. There's a way to be very efficient by getting some damage on the spot and then doing your focus strike, or rather not using your focus strike at all because maybe your teammate in the party is using a weapon that has a better focus strike or it benefits them more. I expect this to be something players eventually min-max and debate to optimize for their hunts. Coming in at number 8 is hunt preparation. Making sure you're stocked with items before a hunt in any Monster Hunter game is very vital, especially if you haven't faced that monster before. If it's one you have faced before or that you're finding difficult, a little research also goes a long way. It's not currently confirmed that we'll get a research center like we did in Monster Hunter World, but tools and knowledge like this are essential for success. Knowing where a monster's weak points are, which damage types it's vulnerable against, where they're vulnerable against these damage types, and more. And don't be afraid to use videos, websites, or guides that compile this information for you as well. Is there a monster constantly blinding you? Well, did you know that you can damage its head enough to make sure that it loses the ability to do so? Don't have enough DPS to take out a specific monster? Maybe switch to a sword with the thunder element that it's weak against, or consider bringing some thunder ammo. Constantly running out of that thunder ammo mid-quest? Well, bring the ingredients to craft more of those on the go, or check the map to see where you can find more of the ingredients needed to craft the ammo during the hunt. Did you bring enough potions? Did you run out of potions? Does this monster have a poison attack? Did you bring antidotes to cleanse the poison status? Does the monster roar always interrupt your combos and leave you vulnerable? Maybe you bring earplugs level 3 upgrade, which makes you invulnerable to the roars. You know, little stuff like that. Some of it comes with experience, and I know this is common sense to most, but preparation indeed goes a long way, especially if you're struggling with the quest. Next, we have tip number 7, which is even more important if you're new to the series, and that's to set your own expectations in your hunts and move at your own pace. You're going to see a lot of videos on YouTube, Reddit posts, clips on Twitter, and wherever else people post things online. Just videos of people demolishing bosses in under 3 minutes that you barely beat within the 50-minute time limit. You're going to have this long half-hour cinematic difficult quest, and you're going to see that same quest be a part of some other guy's speedrun compilation while they beat it in like 5 minutes. You have to remember that not everyone is Team Darkside, okay? You have to move at your own pace and enjoy the game. Take your time, get immersed, and most importantly, prioritize fun. Coming in at number 6 is map knowledge and utilizing your environment. This is very important in just about any Monster Hunter game, but knowing your hunting grounds is vital. This includes things like knowing where natural traps are in the environment. This can be anything from the makeshift pitfall traps that come from the trees to hidden flash flies that blind a monster, even falling rocks and boulders that cause devastating damage. There's a reason the shortest time speedruns make use of the environment and baiting the monster into certain specific locations rather than focusing more so on the weapon and the combo timings themselves. Good map knowledge will help you know where even less obvious traps like paratoads are, or even let you know where to gather more scarce resources and replenish materials while out on the hunt. Speaking of gatherables and scarce resources, tip number 5 is to gather everything you see. Hunts can get expensive to maintain, especially if you're losing often. There's not too many worse feelings than literally not being able to afford special ammo for your bowgun, or my priority purchases, which are flash pods, traps, and tranquilizer. With the auto-pathing of your secret mount, definitely stop to gather, and remember, you can also gather from a very good range from your mount, which is super convenient. Next up is guarding. While a well-placed dodge is all fine and dandy and a very safe tactic, especially if your weapon isn't out, the introduction of the perfect guard is one of my favorite and most satisfying gameplay elements to enter Monster Hunter combat. Blocking throughout the series has naturally caused you to take some chip damage, some stamina loss, and or some pushback depending on the guard. But the introduction of perfect guard adds an entirely new skill ceiling to Monster Hunter by lessening or outright getting rid of those negatives. You'll know the timing window of a perfect guard by your shield or weapon glowing white for about 1 to about 1.5 seconds tops. It's sort of like a parry window. Another cool aspect of guarding is the clash system. You build up to a potential clash by blocking attacks, and perfect guards increase that build up even more. These cinematic struggles are really a cool addition, and you just need to mash triangle or Y or whatever you have it on your keybinds. And obviously, to initiate this, the weapon type needs to be capable of guarding, which is indicated when selecting it in your equipment. But guarding is even more valuable than ever, especially on weapons you seldomly guarded on before, like the sword and shield or the greatsword. It's almost worth noting that the heavy bowgun can clash as well and has a built-in auto guard now, as long as you're not committed to a different action with it at that moment. Next up at number 3 is offset attacks. Some weapons have access to offset attacks, which is essentially specific attacks in that weapon kit which, if done at the same time a monster is attacking you, will give you hyper armor, slightly flinch or stun the foe, and may allow for a follow-up attack. I won't go into too much detail as Shinkrai has a really good video better detailing this, which I'll link in the description. Coming in at number 2 is choosing the right weapon for you. This sounds simple enough, but I've heard tales from many veterans of the series who just couldn't get into Monster Hunter anytime they tried, and they eventually got hooked when they found that right weapon. I highly encourage everyone to spend a lot of time, even if it's hours at the training range, just testing different weapons, because when you find that special weapon, it's a good feeling. It makes the experience and gameplay that much better. If you picked up Wilds and the first weapon you tried was the gun lance, you'll have a different first impression of combat and the hunts than a person who tried it for the first time and probably picked up Insect Glaive. You may start off with a greatsword and feel it's just not mobile enough, or maybe that's just not the right fit for you. But before uninstalling or refunding your copy, maybe see how the sword and shield feels. Have you tried the dual blades perhaps? Monster Hunter Wilds now allows you to have 2 weapons, so my advice is to really just focus on finding your main and then just cycle through options for secondaries to see what feels right. Even your main weapon may not be the most efficient on a specific hunt or a specific monster, so mastering a backup weapon could become the game changer for you. I'll likely be a lance main personally, but I definitely am still very undecisive about that secondary weapon slot. Last but certainly not least, at number 1 is some advice that I've always told buddies getting into Monster Hunter, and that is that it's a game won in the settings menu. What do I mean by this? Well, this was even more the case with Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter Wilds, but there is even more so now than ever. So many customizable settings to cater the experience to your needs. I'm talking gameplay settings like the focus mode thing that we discussed earlier. There is so many quality of life changes that you wouldn't think that you'll be able to even have like a say-so in. And I'm not necessarily talking about customizing your radial menu or equipment loadouts, although that's obviously extremely important too. However, I'm more so talking about how do you want that radial menu to even function? Do you want the item you were last hovering on to automatically be used so that it's a lot quicker? Or do you want to press R3 to select it so you don't accidentally use something or pull something out in the middle of combat? What about keybinds? What about inputs and their camera orientation? Do you want your mount to automatically track towards the large monster when you get on it, or would you rather have manual control and then direct it to follow? What about your Palico companions or the NPCs you summon with SOS flares? Are you okay with them placing traps down? Maybe you're guarding a lot with your gun lance and you don't want to risk your companions taking away that guard clash instead of you. Maybe you don't want your hunt companions mounting the target monster, but maybe if you brought a light bowgun and you're probably not getting a lot of mount damage anyway, you want them to do that. These are just basic options, but there is so much more and so many intricate settings in the Monster Hunter Wilds interface. I plan on doing a best and underrated Monster Hunter Wilds settings video a little bit after launch, so make sure you're subscribed for more. But that's going to be everything for this one. Please comment below on any useful tips that I missed so you can be featured in the updated version of this video where we go over the best tips. If you made it this far, please like the video as it helps others to find it. Thank you as always to our YouTube channel members who signed up via the link below, our Twitch subs, the Patreon members as well. Join us on Discord as we build up our gathering hall. Links for all will be in the description below, and thank you for the big support on our last Monster Hunter video where we discussed the hype around Monster Hunter Wilds. A link to that will now be on screen. Thank you all so much for watching. It's been nice.